Hello everyone and welcome to the Hobby Guard. In today's video I will be reviewing the book Oaths of Damnation by Robbie McNiven, I think is the author's name. Give me a sec here, let me double check that. Yes, Robbie McNiven. It's not the first book of Robbie that I read, but still this is the second one I would say that I really like. He's a very reliable author so far in the couple of books of his that I recall reading. And this will be a spoiler-free review. I will go into spoilers eventually, but I will make it very clear before I go into spoilers. I'm not even sure yet whether I'll make it a two-part video thing. So I guess I'll find out depending on how long this first part takes me. But anyways, the book Oaths of Damnation is the first book ever that I read about the Exorcist chapter. And I will read you the synopsis and what it's about in a second here. But I just want to say, just a quick preamble. I always thought The Exorcist as a chapter were a kind of a very stupid idea in the world of Warhammer 40,000. Because to me, a Space Marine, what a Space Marine encompasses, sure, they're supposed to be very different, right? There's supposed to be a lot of variety in the sense that from one chapter to another they have different cultures, different traditions, different practices. But to go as far as to allow yourself to be possessed by a demon, which is what the Exorcists are known for, is extremely heretical. And it's very radical, right? If you have read the Eisenhorn books or Ravenor books, you'll understand the difference between a Puritan and a radical in terms of the Inquisition. Well, this Space Marine chapter is completely radical. That's not the only reason I thought it was kind of a dumb idea. I also thought it kind of stepped on the toes of a better, more well-known Space Marine chapter called the Grey Knights, chapter 666 of the Adeptus Astartes. And the Grey Knights is just a chapter full of psychers, and they have different all these psychers, they have different classes, different, what's it called? Sorry, roles. They play different roles in their chapters, so they're not all just like the psyker role. Some are librarians, some are paladins. They just have different roles, but altogether it's just like the most effective chapter usually at fighting chaos. Probably somewhere between them and the Dark Angels, even though some people might not like that comparison. So the Exorcists are kind of a weird one in that sense, right? Because they kind of step on their toes, only worse. Because yeah, they allow themselves to be possessed by demons, and they gain, by doing so, a sort of armor against demonic possession. But it's like, yeah, but you already allowed yourself to be possessed by a demon in the first place, so what's the point? And as we will see in this book, there are very heavy, very dire consequences for making a pact, for communing with the forces of the warp, and they pay them dearly. So all this to say, I never thought it was like a good idea to to have this chapter just in the lore, until I don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not a cool idea. Sure, it can be a cool idea, and depending on how you would like to roleplay them, you might create these very interesting stories on the tabletop or in your head or whatever. For example, in this video here, I am role-playing one in Space Marine 2, and like and subscribe if you want to see more content like that, because I will teach you all about how to roleplay an Exorcist Space Marine in the game Space Marine 2. But anyways, it can be interesting. Yeah, it can lend itself to interesting situations narratively in your head, but just in the overall lore. This book, and there's a reason I am saying all of this, okay? This book, I was biased already against this book when I started reading it, and by the end, I wanted more. And I think that can sum up the review. I will say this book is so sad. It's just so dry of not emotion but of reaction from the parties involved, that I had to take a break, because as I have mentioned before in the channel, I just went through some very harsh events. I went through a family tragedy, which took a big emotional toll on my soul. So I had to stop reading the book for a couple of weeks, and I had to read an Iron Hands book so I could steel myself and then go back to this one, because again, the characters in this book are extremely emotionally dry, and we will discuss why further down the road, probably in the spoiler-free version. In the spoiler talk portion of the video or of this review. But yeah, that's how involved I felt. Even though the characters are extremely emotionally dry, they are incredibly stoic and sort of kind of hollow in a sense. What they go through is extremely tragic. What they go through is extremely emotional, and sure enough, I am not emotionally hollow. I am not a space marine. I do have emotions, and I was just feeling for this chapter. And I have to admit, this is one of the saddest Space Marine chapters ever. But of course, they don't see themselves as sad. They don't feel the sadness of it. To them, it's just, well, it is what it is. You know, we all get our lot in life, and so. Yeah, so anyways, going finally into the review, let me just read here the synopsis that's there online. It reads, Oaths of Damnation, an Exorcist novel. The Exorcist... Hold on, let me put my own old man glasses on, because I don't want to mess this up too badly. The Exorcists are a Space Marine chapter unlike any other. To combat the forces of chaos, they willingly accept demonic possession, knowing that once it's purged, their shattered souls will no longer be susceptible to corruption. Those who fail the banishment trials become broken ones, leaving prisons for the terrors expelled from their brethren. Should such desperate measures become known to the wider Imperium, the chapter would stand accused of the vilest heresies. Read it because discover what happens when a broken one is freed and a demonic conspiracy threatens to unveil the dark rituals of the Exorcists. The story. The Exorcist, this is a synopsis by the way, so if you don't want to hear the synopsis or read the synopsis of the book, if you like to go in blind, as I do usually, skip 30 seconds ahead. The Exorcists dispatch their vanguard elite, the Hexbreakers, in a desperate quest to hunt down a broken one. But the connection between their quarry and their strike force commander, Dagan Zaidu, is more than it first appears. Written by Robbie McNiven, narrated by Charles Armstrong. So yeah, that's the gist of it. Sorry, I opened my my player display there. Oh. And yeah, let me start by addressing just the tone of the book, okay? The tone, I'm just trying to... I won't tell you whether like, oh, it's a good book or oh, it's a bad book. I want to talk to you about the book in terms that help you decide whether you would like to read this, okay? So first of all, the tone of the book. It is very dark. It is very Grimdark, naturally. A lot of stuff is going on, but it is constantly... mostly narrated from the point of view of this Space Marine chapter, right? Which they are, as I said previously, very stoic, very blank, emotionally blank, anemically stunted, anemically numb. So whether you're into that or not, well, it depends. The events that occur are very emotional. It's just their reaction to the events that is extremely dry. Now, for me personally, I don't mind that at all, because this is a staple of the chapter and there is a reason for them to be dry, right? As I keep saying, emotionally dry. I don't know if that's something that makes sense in English, but at least in Spanish it makes sense. But yeah, kind of emotionally colorless, kind of monotone, emotionally monotone. I don't know if that makes more sense to you. But anyways, the characters, the three main characters, or maybe four main characters, that they are the point of view characters through this book is, well, the first one, Dagan Zaidu, the former commander of the Hexbreakers, which are like this vanguard elite of the Exorcists. And they are basically all, I just picture them all pretty much as Phobos 10 armor pattern units, Okay, that's another thing. This is one of those books that you can tell right away that it is made to sell you miniatures, okay? And it worked. I have a strike team of Phobos pattern Space Marines, and I now want to paint them all as Exorcists, which I might not do because I already started way too many armies, and I cannot stand another one without finishing the other ones that I have previously started. But anyways, the point is there is a reason why GW does this sort of book, and they work, and I don't mind it. I understand that they are written to sell me miniatures. As long as the book is good, I don't mind, okay? I think this is one of those cases. I think this is one of those books that enriches the lore. Picture it as, it feels a lot like a Space Marine, like the video game Space Marine campaign. Like the whole campaign is like a few missions. You do a few missions during the campaign, and you follow these characters throughout the campaign, and you get to see through the missions a bit of their personality. Sorry, I just noticed that my camera is like really small here. Yeah. You learn more about their personalities, their relationship to each other, and so on during the campaign. But in the end, the real narrative that connects everything together are the missions, right? The objectives that these Space Marines have. So, that being said, let's talk about the characters, okay? Without going too much into spoilers, there was a lot of potential for these characters because the way the Exorcists work as a chapter is when they're initiated, they invite a demon to possess them, and yes, they are aided by a psyker in this endeavor, and yes, they are closely watched by the Plutonian faction of the Inquisition, very radical faction obviously, during this whole trial, the trial of banishment. But in the end, they are the ones who, through their own force of will and strength of will and character and faith in the Emperor, have to exorcise the demon from their own soul, the demon that they invited to their own soul. So that just on its own sounds crazy, and that the fact that every single one of these Space Marines had to go through that trial, and it just changed them forever and scarred their souls forever, that itself lends to a very interesting narrative potential, I suppose. However, the demon that these Space Marines get possessed by, the characteristic of the demon that these Space Marines get possessed by, also affect their character and personality, and their emotions or lack thereof. So their temperament even. Now, I don't think it's made clear in the book, but if it's not, I guess you can just assume that, for example, if you are a person who's more inclined to violence, to aggression, to power dynamics through physical control and physical overpowering, you might be a more suitable vessel for a Cornite demon, right? And this is just an example, once you get possessed. But then after that, all those characteristics, indeed, get exalted. They get more pronounced because you already, when you in Warhammer, demons are nothing but the sort of like not ethereal, but the higher world, or the warp version and representation of every human emotion, thought, and desire, and even like the rules of nature and things like that, right? They're just a warped version of it, but they can materialize in the real world under very specific circumstances. And when you get possessed by that, you explore basically the darkest depths of your soul. So I think it is understood in the book that, I don't know, if someone has a more like a certain personality aspects that are more compatible with a demon from a chaos domain or the other, it's more likely that they will invite that demon in. But anyways, I don't want to ramble too much about it. The point is, there are 3 main characters, technically 4, but that get possessed by demons from different domains, except Nurgle. There is mention of a Space Marine, not to spoil too much, but a Space Marine that got possessed by Nurgle, but we don't get to explore too much of how that affects their personality. But the protagonist, Dagan Zaidu, He's possessed by a coronite demon originally, and in fact the story very much revolves around his relationship to this demon that got possessed. But there's also characters. I think his name was Vey, and he gets possessed by a sentient demon. And thus, unlike Sairu, who just gains a lot of battle vitality and an incredible sixth sense for the hunt, just for endless, relentless hunt. His literal name is the Sin Slayer, so it immediately reminds me of the Doom Slayer from Doom, because that's basically him. That's basically his entire personality. He's the Doom Slayer, which is to say he doesn't have a personality outside of combat, at least at the very start of the book. Don't expect him to go into very long monologues and very emotional ramblings about his opinion on the state of the world or anything. No, he is basically the Doom Slayer, even though it's called the Sin Slayer, which sounds metal AF. And yeah, that's Sairu. But Vey, I think his name is Vey, he is the librarian in charge of this operation with the Hexbreakers, and he got possessed by a sentient demon, and so he is very plotty, let's say. He loves to plot, he loves to strategize, he loves to deceive and to entrap his enemies. And when I say love, mind you, they don't really love, obviously. It's just that's just more how they operate. But he also gains the power to taste lies, to detect lies. Sorry, I just spit all over my microphone. That's gross. He gains the power to detect lies, right? And the other character, I will tell you in a minute why I found this so interesting. The other character in this book that just really caught my eye is, I think his name was Nu, who is a sniper. And this sniper got possessed by a sentient demon. And so he finds a lot of pleasure in the pursuit of perfection. And perfection for a sniper, a Space Marine sniper, nonetheless, would be to go after that perfect shot. And so we can see in all these scenarios how these powers that they gain from these demons are both a power, they're both a boon and a curse, because in one end, yeah, these things, they affect their character in a way that aids them in their pursuit of the enemy, but at the same time they have to be incredibly aware of their internal inner processes. They are a very occult chapter. They are all sort of scholars of the warp to an extent, and they are very cultured, very well read. They are in constant suffering and in constant inner pull. They're in constant battle with themselves. I don't know, very, very tragic, as I said, very sad chapter. And they have to go through all of this just to operate with a modicum of normality compared to other Space Marine chapters. But once they manage to do that, they are, I would say they become more interesting characters, because we're reading these from their point of view. So we get a window into the soul of a Space Marine whose very own soul has been carved out and abused by a demon. So I don't want to say too much more about these characters, because I don't want to run the risk of spoiling too much of the story for you. But if that sounds interesting, well, that's another reason for you to read this book. And the other thing is the action in this book, the type of story that it is. I already mentioned sort of the narrative that goes through, sort of the things that you will be focusing on, except I suppose I haven't mentioned how, and this is just before we move into the action, I forgot to mention how interesting it is that these Space Marines that, again, have been hollowed out emotionally from literally within their soul, and who have to keep constantly themselves in check, their emotions in check, their thoughts in check, and at the same time they have to serve a role. You know, for example, for Zairu, his role is to be the Sin Slayer. His role is to be the hound who hunts his enemies no matter what, and he's very aware of that. And he's like, yeah, this is probably not the smart thing to do, but this is my role, and so I have to play it. So the other very interesting thing is how these Space Marines find brotherhood with one another, how they relate to each other. And this is a very, not to spoil anything, but to me this was perhaps the highlight of the book. Seeing these examples of stoicism, of emotional dryness, of just broken souls, still find the motivation to push through their entire situation. They know that their souls have already been damned because they have already communed with demons, and yet only in death does duty end, and so they push through to carry on their duty. And they, obviously because of all that circumstance, they have a lot of problems relating to each other, or feeling the bonds of brotherhood, the bonds of friendship that other Space Marines will feel with other Space Marines, because again, they are emotionally very hollowed out, as I have said a billion times now. But in a weird sense, the fact that they all feel like that they have all suffered so, makes it so that that is the thing that binds them together, right? And they can still feel, to an extent, respect for one another. And again, it's no less tragic for being so, but by the end of the book, I was very heartbroken, but also very inspired by these characters and just the stalwart nobility of their actions. Even if they can't see it, they can't characterize it on their own. They cannot characterize themselves so, because again, they're like blanks, right? They just fulfill their role, and they feel no remorse and no regret for it, and they feel no sadness pretty much about it. But it's ironic that I died in the gameplay in just this part. I'm getting absolutely murked in that mission. I hope you don't get to see the end of the mission here. But anyways, that is basically what had me sticking around till the end of the book. Just how they relate to each other, and seeing it through the eyes of these characters who can very eloquently put their thoughts and emotions to, like, put words to their thoughts and emotions, because that's basically their mission, that's basically part of their training. They have to be extremely self-aware. It's just something that I really liked, really enjoyed. So now I will talk about the action in the book, because we all like our bolter corn, so to speak. We all like our action scenes. So this book is incredibly action-packed. It is very gnarly, very grimdark, as I said before, but very chaosy, right? So there are very interesting descriptions of chaos, of the things that happen in chaos. There is also chaos Space Marine characters in this book. I won't talk too much about them, as to not to spoil anything. But yes, if you are into the chaos grimdark aspect of Warhammer 40k, you will find a lot of it in this book, because basically, again, these are Space Marines that share their minds and their souls with a demon already. So you are constantly seeing, like, both sides of their monologue inside their head, right? And yes, lots of action, very dark action. Don't expect, like, very emotional action, even though it is not from the point of view of the characters, though. For them, it's just like another day at the office. So don't expect Siege of Terra levels of of emotion in the action, but there is a lot of action that goes on, and there's just a lot of keyword writing in this book. Let me pause the gameplay right there, because that's the end of my gameplay, and I don't want you to see the end of it in this video, because I will use that gameplay for another video. Spoiler, I'm about to get absolutely murked. Anyways, yeah, keyword, this is keyword porn, okay? So you will hear everything about all the types of units, and I don't know about you, but me, when the book itself starts, like, mentioning, oh, this is this type of unit, this is that type of unit, and this unit does that thing, and this is the pattern of the last rifle, whatever, and this is my whatever pattern bolt gun and knife. And to me, that's just, again, that's just propaganda to buy the toys, the miniatures, which I'm perfectly fine for. It just, like, offers no narrative value so much to me. because you understand why it's there, right? I just see it as the advertisements when you're watching a show or a movie on TV, which I guess I don't do anymore, but back when I used to. Do people still watch shows on cable TV? I don't know. But anyways, there's commercial breaks. That's what that is to me, right? Pretty much when I start reading all the keywords and yeah, he was an eliminator sergeant, whatever, using the whatever pattern last rifle bolter. I'm not that type of. I'm a fan of Warhammer 40k. I'm not that type of fan and nerd who needs to learn like every little detail of what everything is called. I'm a fan of the stories and the narratives and what the characters go through and so on, and the narrative potential of it. So yeah, when it turns into just keywords for the tabletop, I tune out. There is a lot of that in this book as well, but let's be honest here, that goes for a lot of Warhammer books. So if you're okay with that, and if anything of what I just said, do you think that sounds attractive for you, for the book in general, that's something you would like to read, then check the book out. I think you might like it. I think you might be pleasantly surprised, even if you, like myself, thought that The Exorcists were a stupid chapter. That being said, if you have already read the book, or you don't care about spoilers, we will be jumping into the spoiler version of this video. This is a 25-minute video, so I might just do that in a separate video now. So yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, and check back again soon for the spoiler deep talk. Is that what it's called? Sorry, the spoiler deep dive of this book, when we will talk in depth about the actual things that happen and what I thought about them, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the sad. By the Emperor, by the Golden Throne, the sadness in this book. But anyways, that's all I gotta say for today. So thanks for coming, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see this channel level up. And welcome to the Hobby Guard Space Marine chapter. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Remember, Ad Astra, and there are no female custodies.